In 1978, months after Elvis Presley's death, Priscilla Presley found a small cassette hidden inside his bedside drawer, labeled in fading ink, "For You." When she pressed play, his voice filled the room. But what he said on that tape wasn't a song. It was something the world was never meant to hear. March 1978. Memphis, Tennessee. Graceland had been quiet for months. The gates still drew tourists every day. But inside, the house had become a museum of silence. Every clock tick sounded too loud. Every creak of the staircase reminded her of laughter that would never come back. Priscilla Presley stood at the doorway of his bedroom for a long time before stepping inside. The scent of cologne and vinyl lingered. His sunglasses still sat on the dresser. On the bed, the same blue coverlet was perfectly folded, as if he might walk back in any second. She told herself she was only there to collect a few keepsakes for Lisa Marie. A photograph, maybe a guitar pick. But grief doesn't follow logic. It leads you toward what hurts most. She opened the top drawer of his nightstand. Stuck halfway, she tugged harder. Something wedged behind the frame stopped it from closing all the way. Inside were the ordinary fragments of a life. Half-burned candles, cufflinks, a broken pen, a hotel key from Las Vegas Hilton. November 14, 1976, room 3007. And at the back, nearly hidden beneath an old scarf, lay a cassette tape. No case, just a white sticker on its front, written in faded blue ink. 3 words, "For You." Her first thought was that it might be an old demo. Elvis had recorded hundreds of home tapes. Gospel riffs, playful takes, nonsense melodies when insomnia hit. But this tape looked different. It wasn't labeled with a date or song title, just that message. She turned it over in her hand. Someone had pressed fingerprints into the plastic long ago. 1,000 memories rushed back. Late nights in the den, the hum of the tape recorder as he practiced. His voice saying, "Don't erase this one, Scylla. This one's for you." For a moment, she wondered if this was that same tape. But that recording had vanished years before. Her heartbeat quickened. In the corner of the room sat the same cassette player he'd used for years. Silver, scuffed, its buttons worn from overuse. She plugged it in. The electric click echoed through the stillness. Her hand trembled as she slid the tape inside. What if it was just static? Or worse, what if it was nothing at all? She pressed play. A hiss filled the room, the familiar sound of old tape breathing after too long in the dark. Then, faintly, a few soft strums of a guitar. And then, his voice. "Scylla." The word was gentle, almost shy. She froze. It wasn't a rehearsal. It wasn't a song. It was him talking directly to her. "If you're hearing this," he said, his voice shaking, "then I guess I'm gone." Her breath caught. The sound was alive, close, painfully intimate, like he was sitting right beside her again. He continued, "Don't be sad too long now. This ain't a goodbye. It's something I should have said while I could still find the words." The guitar paused. Silence. Then the tape crackled again, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "I just need you to know the truth." She reached for the stop button, but couldn't, because whatever came next, she knew, would change the way she remembered him forever. The sound filled the room, warm, crackling, alive. Elvis's voice trembled as if it were speaking across time itself. Between breaths, the faint whir of the tape reels created a rhythm, like a heartbeat under his words. "Scylla," he began again, "I don't know when you'll hear this. Maybe when you're ready. Maybe when I'm not around to make a mess of saying it in person." His laugh was soft, broken, the kind of laugh that comes from someone who's already cried. He went on, "You know me, always hid behind a song. Easier that way. The world don't ask questions if you rhyme the truth." Priscilla's eyes blurred. She could see him, the way he used to record at 3 a.m., barefoot, hair messy, eyes red but glowing when the music came. The static rose, then settled. "Sometimes," he said, "I think I forgot how to talk like a man and only learned how to sing like a ghost." She covered her mouth, afraid to breathe too loud and break the spell. He paused. Faint shuffle, the scrape of a chair leg, then the sound of him lighting a cigarette. You could almost hear the flame catch. "I've done a lot wrong," he continued, "but I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to do it right while the world was watching." The words hit like confession, simple, unpolished, real. Priscilla's hand tightened around the player. He sighed. "I used to think applause meant I was loved. But applause don't follow you home. It fades faster than the echo in an empty hall." The tape cracked again. A few low guitar notes hummed beneath his voice. "I don't want this to sound sad," he said. "I just need you to know I was trying, even when I got lost." He stopped, then whispered almost to himself, "I hope Lisa never learns love the way I did." Loud on stage, quiet when it counts. The hum of the guitar grew louder. He strummed a few chords, then fell silent. For nearly a full minute, there was nothing but static, the soft, eternal hum of distance. Then, quietly, "I can't sleep anymore, Scylla. Every time I close my eyes, I see a boy singing to a girl he thought he'd never lose." Priscilla leaned against the wall, tears streaking her cheeks. "How do you listen to someone you loved after they're gone, knowing you can't answer back?" She rewound the tape, afraid to go further but unable to stop. When the playback returned to that pause, she realized something strange. There was a faint echo under his words, like another voice caught by accident. Maybe an old recording bleeding through. Maybe something else. She turned up the volume. Piano chord, low, slow, hesitant. Then another. Her breath hitched. He wasn't just talking anymore. He was preparing to play. The guitar went quiet. The piano took over. And then he said it. 5 words that froze her in place. "This ain't for the world." The line cut straight through the static, clear as day. He wasn't recording for a label or a fan club. This tape wasn't meant for anyone but her. And as the next sound played, the unmistakable thud of a piano key struck by trembling fingers, Priscilla realized the confession was only the beginning. The song was coming. The piano notes were uneven, soft, like he was feeling his way through a memory rather than a melody. Then his voice came back, lower this time, cracked around the edges. "I'm not proud of the man I became," Elvis said, "but I want you to know I never forgot where the man came from." He paused, inhaling sharply. You could hear the sound of his breath scrape against the microphone. "I kept telling the world I was fine. But the truth is, fame don't heal you. It just hides you." Priscilla felt her chest tighten. She'd heard him say similar things in interviews, half-truths polished for cameras. But this was different. This was Elvis without armor. He went on, "You remember that night in '63 before Vegas? When I said I wanted to quit? You laughed. Said I was too stubborn to stop singing. But I wasn't joking, Scylla. I was tired of singing about love I couldn't live." The piano fell silent. "I started writing again after you left. Songs nobody heard. Too real for radio. I'd sit right here, at this same piano, and pretend you were in the next room, listening." He chuckled sadly. "Guess I'm still doing that now." Priscilla covered her mouth. The image was too vivid, him, alone in that room, whispering songs into the dark. He continued, "I wrote a song called For You. Never showed it to anyone. The label said people don't want truth. They want a story they can dance to. So I gave it to them. I gave M the king. But I kept the man for you." The words were slow, heavy, deliberate. Each one a piece of a life he'd kept locked away. "I thought about sending it to you once. But then I figured maybe some things are better left unfinished. Like us." He exhaled, long and shaky. "I ain't asking you to forgive me," he said. "Just remember me, right? Not the legend. Not the pictures. The man who used to fall asleep holding your hand, humming gospel, 'cause he was scared of the quiet." For a few seconds, only silence. Then the faint sound of rain hitting the window pane. "Lisa's gonna grow up in a world that don't see her daddy the way he really was," he whispered. "If you ever tell her anything about me, tell her I was a man who tried, even when it didn't look like it." The tape crackled again, that same low hiss that made every word feel haunted. "Scylla, if this tape outlives me, don't let anyone play it. This ain't for them." This is just so you'll know I never stopped writin' for you. He cleared his throat, and the piano returned. Just 3 soft notes. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, I still remember your laugh. I tried to put it in a song once, but no sound ever came close. Priscilla pressed her fingers to her lips. What do you do when the voice of someone you lost starts telling you everything you were afraid to hear? She closed her eyes. Tears rolled freely now. The piano faded. The faint scrape echoed. Then silence. But not for long. Because a moment later, she heard the first verse of a song she had never heard before. And it wasn't like anything the world had ever heard him sing. The first note echoed like a secret breaking free. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It was human. Elvis's fingers pressed down on the piano keys with hesitation, like he was afraid of what might come out next. The tape hissed beneath the sound, raw, grainy, alive. Then he began to sing. You gave me tomorrow when I lost today. You stayed when I drifted away. The words were fragile, shaky, more like a prayer than a melody. His voice cracked halfway through the second line, and he laughed softly, embarrassed, real. Priscilla gasped. She had never heard this before. It wasn't in any archive, any rehearsal, any tape she'd ever known. This was his heart, unedited, unguarded. He continued, voice trembling. They called me the king, but you knew the boy, the one who just wanted his mama's joy. The piano stumbled, paused, then resumed, slower now, softer. Outside, rain began to patter against the window pane. It felt like the sound was keeping rhythm with his pain. Between verses, he whispered little things. That part ain't right. Should have kept that chord. Just a man talking to himself in the dark. Then, near the middle of the song, something changed. His tone grew steadier, deeper. If I'm just a voice when the lights go dim, don't remember the songs, remember him. The room around Priscilla blurred. She wasn't at Graceland anymore. She was back in their first house in California. Elvis sitting cross-legged on the floor, guitar in his lap, smiling at her like the world didn't yet know his name. She whispered to the air, You still remember. The tape kept playing. If I ever hurt you, it wasn't pretend. I just didn't know how to end. He stopped singing. You could hear him set the guitar down. Then he said softly, almost as if answering her thoughts, This ain't an apology, Scylla. It's a thank you. The tape clicked. The sound dipped for a moment, muffled by age and static, before returning with a breath. For every laugh, for every fight, for every long, lonesome night, you taught me love don't fade. It just learns how to wait. Priscilla's tears fell freely now. The song wasn't written for the stage. It was written for the spaces between them, the love that had outlived both their pride and their words. And yet, something about his tone in those final lines felt different, like he knew time was running out. He said, If you ever find this, don't cry for what's gone. Just promise me you'll listen till the end. She nodded through her tears, whispering, I'm here. The last notes of the song faded into static. Then silence. But just before the tape stopped, his voice returned one final time, quiet, deliberate. Scylla, he said, if you ever play this for the world, make sure they understand. I wasn't saying goodbye. I was saying I still love you. The reel slowed. The tape clicked off. Her trembling hands pressed rewind. She listened again and again. Every word cut deeper. Every pause felt heavier, until one line she'd missed before echoed clearer than the rest. Something he'd whispered right after the song faded. There's one more thing you need to know. And the tape continued to roll. The tape didn't end. It breathed. A hush, a brush of his sleeve against the mic, then a quiet intake like he was gathering courage he'd never found on stage. I been thinking about the kind of man I'll be remembered as, he whispered. The pictures ain't me. The billboards ain't me. I'm the fella who burns the toast and sings to the dog. Priscilla laughed and cried at the same time. She could see him in the kitchen on a Sunday morning, hair a mess, robe tied wrong, cracking jokes to make the world feel lighter. He went on, if they ask you who I was, tell 'em I was a man who tried to love right, but sang wrong. She covered her mouth. That line pierced clean through the years. It wasn't self-pity. It was clarity. "Don't let em make me a statue," he added. "Statues don't apologize. Statues don't learn." He shifted in his chair. A soft clink. Glass against wood. "I got two things left, Scylla," he said. "A truth and a favor." Her breath slowed. "The truth is, I never wrote a love song the world could hold because the real ones were too heavy to lift. You can't chart a heart. You just carry it." Silence. Then the favor. "If Lisa ever asks why I lived the way I did, don't hand her the headlines. Hand her the quiet. Tell her her daddy used to stand at windows and pray. Tell her I was brave sometimes, scared most times and trying all the time." Priscilla pressed her palm to the cassette deck, as if touch could time travel. She whispered, "I will." He wasn't finished. "There's a box in the music room, bottom shelf behind the hymnals. Open it on a day when you can forgive me. Inside's a few pages. Things I never sang." Her eyes shifted toward the doorway, as if the room itself might point the way. "Last thing," he said, voice thinning. "If this tape ever sees daylight, let it be because somebody needs permission to tell the truth they're scared to say. Let me do one good thing quiet." The cigarette ember hissed out. Paper rustled. The chair scraped closer to the mic. "I'm tired, Scylla." A fragile laugh. "But I ain't empty." Then came the line that broke her. "I didn't lose you to fame. I lost me, and you couldn't love what wasn't there." She folded forward, forehead to her knees, sobbing into her hands. The sentence unlocked every locked door. It named the ache that postcards and gold records never touched. What would you do if the apology you needed arrived years late, wrapped in static and a stranger's bravery? Would you keep it to yourself, or let it heal a crowd that once cheered while you quietly broke? The tape wound down into a soft mechanical purr. One last whisper slipped through. "Thank you for the ordinary days." Click. Priscilla stared at the player. The house around her felt different, lighter, honest. She stood, wiped her face, and walked to the music room. Bottom shelf. Behind the hymnals. There it was. A small cedar box, banded with tarnished brass. Inside lay a scarf from the Las Vegas Hilton, a hotel key, 3 Polaroids, and a thin stack of handwritten pages labeled for you. The first line read, "Songs that were too true." She closed the lid and held it to her chest. The choice ahead was impossible and clear, because the world would ask for a relic. But what they needed was a resurrection. Years passed before Priscilla could open that box again. She'd moved on in life, but grief never left. It just changed shape. Each time she passed the old cassette player in storage, she'd pause, run her hand across it and whisper, "Not yet." It wasn't until 2017, 40 years after Elvis's death, that she finally decided. Graceland was preparing a new anniversary exhibit called The Man Behind the Music. Archivists had been cataloging hundreds of private items. Handwritten notes, stage outfits, rehearsal tapes. When they reached out asking if she'd contribute something personal, she knew what she had to do. That night, she brought the cedar box from her closet and set it on her dining table. The smell of old wood filled the room. She stared at the label, "For You." Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside were the pages, the photographs, and the cassette. The ink on the note had faded, but the words still whispered, "Songs that were too true." She took a deep breath, slipped the tape into a modern player, and hit record on a digital converter. The sound that emerged was imperfect, static layered over ghosts. But his voice was still there, tender, cracked, alive. For the first time in decades, the world was about to hear the truth she had kept hidden. Weeks later, during a press preview at Graceland, the track list for the exhibit was unveiled. Among the known classics sat one new title, For You, Home Tape 1977. Journalists leaned forward. Fans whispered. The lights dimmed. The room filled with the sound of an old piano. Then came that voice, fragile yet strong. "You gave me tomorrow when I lost today." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some cried instantly. Others closed their eyes as if in prayer. When the song ended, there was silence. No applause, just stillness. The same stillness Priscilla had felt that night in his room decades earlier. Then a young sound engineer named Ray Connolly approached her backstage, holding the original tape. His eyes were red. "Ma'am," he said, voice shaking, "there's a part at the end of the reel that wasn't digitized. Should I cut it?" Priscilla hesitated. "What part?" He rewound, pressed play. And there it was, the final whisper. "If this ever reaches somebody who's lost, tell him I was found." Ray looked at her. "You want me to leave that in?" She nodded through tears. He meant for someone to hear it. The next morning, headlines spread everywhere. "Lost Elvis tape unearthed." Radio stations played the track on repeat. Fans left flowers at Graceland. But for Priscilla, it wasn't about rediscovery. It was release. In one interview, she finally said, "That tape wasn't for fame. It was for forgiveness." Reporters called it his final confession. She called it something else, a second chance to say, "I understand." The tape became a relic, but the message became a mirror, because everyone who listened heard not just Elvis's voice, but their own regrets echoing back. And when the exhibit lights dimmed each night, a small flicker remained in the glass case, reflecting faintly off the tape's label. The word "you" seemed to glow. Today, that small cassette sits behind glass at Graceland. Visitors line up quietly to see it. Just a faded plastic shell with a handwritten label. "For you." No fanfare, no flashing lights, just a soft loop of static playing in the background. The static isn't empty. It's his breath, his pauses, the quiet between words that once changed someone's life. People lean closer, expecting to hear music. But what they hear instead is something deeper, the sound of truth finding its way home. A boy from Mississippi had once dreamed of singing to the world. In the end, he sang to one woman in one room on one night, and somehow that voice still travels farther than ever. Decades after his death, fans still leave cassette tapes of their own at the base of that display, labeled with the names of people they've lost. A mother, a brother, a friend. Each one carries a message they never got to send. On the 40th anniversary of his passing, a plaque was added beside the case. It reads, "For you, for anyone who still listens for a voice in the silence." Priscilla visits the exhibit sometimes after hours. The staff lets her stand alone with the light dimmed. She says she can still feel him there. Not the star, not the myth, but the man who whispered, "Thank you for the ordinary days." And maybe that's what the world needed to hear all along. That behind the rhinestones, behind the spotlight, was a man still learning how to love right, even after he sang wrong. The tape didn't make him a legend again. It made him human again. Outside, tourists take photos through the glass. But sometimes, when the museum grows quiet and the last guests drift away, something uncanny happens. The tape clicks softly, as if rewinding itself. The staff laughs it off, calls it coincidence. But those who've stood there long enough swear they hear a faint sound through the static. A few piano notes. Then his voice, low, gentle, eternal. "This ain't a goodbye. It's a truth. Maybe it's imagination. Or maybe some voices never stop finding the ones who still listen. Because some stories aren't meant to be finished. They're meant to be replayed." If the story touched you, share it with someone you still wish you could talk to. Maybe record a message, not for the world, but for the one person who still lives in your memory. Because like Elvis said, the song ends, but love doesn't. It just waits for someone to press play.